Montreal, Canada, July 2005. A 25-year-old man sits in a rented apartment with no job, no money, and no real plan. On the desk in front of him is a single red paperclip, the kind you'd find 1,000 of in any office drawer, worth at most a fraction of a cent. He takes a photograph of it, he posts it online, and he makes an absurd promise to the entire internet. He is going to trade this one red paperclip over and over, up and up, until it becomes a house. A house from a paperclip. People laughed. Of course they laughed. 1 year later, he is standing on Main Street in a small town in the middle of Canada, holding the keys to a 2-story house that is now his, and he never spent a single dollar of his own money to get it. 14 trades, a paperclip to a pin to a doorknob eventually to a house. Along the way, a generator seized by the New York Fire Department, an afternoon with a rock legend, a snow globe that made the whole internet call him an idiot, and a role in a Hollywood movie. But here is what almost nobody understands about this story. Kyle MacDonald was not really trading objects at all. And the feel-good internet fairy tale everyone shares leaves out the 2 details that actually make it work. So how does a broke, unemployed man turn a worthless paperclip into a house without ever spending a cent? And why, when he finally got that house, the whole point of the entire year, did he just give it away? To understand what Kyle did, you have to understand what he wasn't doing. He didn't invent this idea. He stole it from childhood. There's an old kids game, sometimes called bigger and better. You start with something small, you knock on doors, and you ask people to trade you for something a little bigger, a little better. A button for a pencil for a toy. Kids play it for an afternoon and end up with a slightly nicer pile of junk. Kyle MacDonald, broke and bored and going nowhere, asked a very simple question. What if you didn't stop after an afternoon? What if you just kept going for a year across a whole continent, using the internet as your front door? How far could one worthless object actually travel? And for Kyle, it wasn't purely a stunt. He was 25, unemployed, and living with his girlfriend, and he had made her a promise that sounded like the setup to a bad joke, that he was going to get them a house. Not earn one. Not buy one, trade his way to one, starting from a paperclip and a photo. It was part art project, part dare, and part act of pure, slightly desperate faith. A man betting a year of his life that he could think his way around money entirely. So in July 2005, he took that red paperclip, photographed it, and posted it on Craigslist and on a blog he set up. The offer was simple.
I have one red paperclip. I want to trade it for something bigger or better. Come and get it.
He set himself a few honest rules, and they matter. No money could ever change hands, not a cent in either direction. He would only trade one item at a time, always for a single item in return. And crucially, he would meet every trader in person to make the swap. No shortcuts, no cash top-ups, no cheating the chain. Whatever happened had to happen purely through the trade itself. That self-imposed honesty is exactly what made the eventual result so hard to believe, and exactly what made it so expensive to pull off. And there was a clock on it too. He didn't tell the internet a hard deadline every day, but in his own head he was racing. A young man watching a year of his life drain away with nothing but a growing pile of other people's cast-offs to show for it. Every month that passed without a house was a month he'd have to explain to the girlfriend he'd made the promise to. It sounds like nothing. It sounds like a joke. But Kyle had quietly stumbled onto a loophole in the way human beings assign value to things. A loophole that money completely hides from us. And the very first trade would show exactly how it worked. The paperclip didn't sit long. 2 young women out in Vancouver saw the post and offered him a pin shaped like a fish. so Kyle flew across the country and made the trade. Red Paperclip, gone. Fish pin, his. On paper, an idiotic move. He'd spent money on travel to swap one worthless item for another. But watch what happens next. The fish pin goes to a woman named Annie, a ceramic artist in Seattle, who hands over a handmade doorknob with a strange little sculpted face on it. A piece odd enough that Kyle gave it a nickname and treated it like a mascot. The doorknob goes to a man named Sean in Massachusetts, an army recruit, who trades a Coleman camp stove, fuel included. The camp stove goes to a man named Marcin out in Queens, New York, and Marcin gives up an actual working Honda generator. Each of these people, notice, thought they were getting the better end of the deal. Annie wanted a quirky fish pin more than a doorknob she'd made herself. Sean wanted the doorknob more than a camp stove gathering dust. Marcin had a generator he didn't need and a stove he did. Nobody felt robbed. Everybody smiled. Look at that jump. In just a few trades, a fraction of a cent paperclip has become a machine that produces electricity. No money changed hands. Nobody got cheated. Every single person walked away happy with their trade. How is that possible? How does worthless become valuable with nobody losing? The answer is the thing that makes this whole story tick, and most people miss it entirely. Here is the secret. Kyle MacDonald was not trading objects. He was trading the fact that different things are worth wildly different amounts to different people. Economists have a dry name for it: relative value, subjective value. Kyle explained it in a way you'll never forget. Imagine, he said, a man dying of thirst in the desert. What is worth more to that man, $1 million or a single glass of water? The money is worthless to him. The water is everything. Value isn't a fixed number. It depends entirely on who is standing in front of you and what they need right now. That fish pin was useless to the two women in Vancouver, but a fun little curiosity to a ceramic artist. The camp stove meant nothing to whoever had it lying in a garage, but was exactly what a generator's owner happened to want. Kyle wasn't climbing a ladder of price. He was hopping from one person's "I don't need this" to another person's "I really want that." Every trade could feel like an upgrade to him and a win to them, because he was never measuring in dollars. He was measuring in desire. That's the exploit. Money flattens everything to one number and hides these gaps. When there's a price tag on something, you stop asking who wants it and how badly. You just see the number. Kyle threw the number away. He stopped asking, "What is this worth?" and started asking, "Who out there wants this more than what they've got?" And once you ask the question that way, the world stops looking like a fixed ladder of prices and starts looking like a giant web of mismatched desires. A web you can walk across, from one person's junk to another person's treasure, forever. The gaps became a staircase he could climb all the way to a house. But knowing the trick is one thing. Actually dragging a growing pile of stuff across North America in person is another. And that part of the story is far messier than the fairy tale admits. Because here's the first piece of dirty laundry the motivational videos never mention. This was not free, and it was not easy. The rule of the project was that money could never be part of a trade. Fair enough, but nothing said the trades came to Kyle. To make them happen, he physically traveled. Vancouver, Seattle, Massachusetts, New York, and later Phoenix, Toronto, and out into the Canadian prairies. He flew and drove thousands upon thousands of miles on his own dime to swap objects in person, hand to hand. The paperclip was free. The plane tickets and the gas absolutely were not. Behind every clean little "he traded up" was a broke guy burning through real money and real months of his life just to keep the chain alive. This became his full-time, unpaid job. A year of living out of a car and off couches, chasing a house that existed only as a promise. And it wasn't only expensive, it got genuinely absurd. When Kyle brought that Honda generator into New York City to trade it, the device was temporarily seized by the New York Fire Department. You can't just leave a fuel-powered generator sitting on a Manhattan street. His prized possession, the crown jewel of the whole project so far, briefly impounded by the FDNY. So this was not a smooth, magical ascent. It was a scrappy, costly, half-chaotic grind held together by one thing Kyle was accidentally becoming very, very good at generating. And that one thing was about to turn the entire project into something much bigger than a pile of traded objects. Watch the generator go. Kyle trades it to Marson, the same Marson, now revealed to be a radio personality, for what got billed as an instant party. An empty beer keg, a neon Budweiser sign, and an IOU for a keg of beer. Ridiculous on its face. But that instant party gets traded to a well-known Quebec comedian named Michel Barrette, who hands over a Ski-Doo snowmobile. Notice the pattern repeating. A comedian who loves a good party swaps a snowmobile he isn't using for a keg and a neon sign, and thinks he got the fun end of the deal. The snowmobile goes to a snowmobiling magazine, Snow Riders West, in exchange for a trip for two into the Rocky Mountains, to the town of Yaak, British Columbia, a place so small it's home to only a few hundred people. And that trip gets traded, right there in Yaak, to a man named Bruno for a box truck, a full-sized cargo van big enough to haul a household. Stop and see how far we've come. A paperclip is now a truck. And something had changed in the machinery of the whole thing. Kyle's blog had exploded. At its peak, it was pulling in something on the order of 100,000 unique visitors a day. Major newspapers wrote him up. Morning shows flew him in. Radio hosts around the world wanted the paperclip guy on the air. He had gone, in a matter of months, from an unemployed nobody photographing office supplies to a genuine international phenomenon. And the moment that happened, the object stopped mattering, because now people weren't trading with Kyle to get his snowmobile or his truck. They were trading with him to stand next to the most famous trade on the internet. He wasn't offering stuff anymore. He was offering the spotlight. And the spotlight, it turns out, is worth far more than any generator. From here, the trades stop looking like barter and start looking like publicity deals. The box truck gets traded to Metalworks, one of Canada's most respected recording studios in Mississauga near Toronto, a place serious artists actually record, for a recording contract worth 30 hours of studio time. Now, what does a guy with no band do with 30 hours of studio time? He trades it.
Sounds like a deal to me.
A Phoenix singer named Jody Nant hands over something extraordinary for that contract. A year of free rent in an apartment in Phoenix, Arizona. Think about that exchange for a second. A year of housing, thousands of dollars of real, tangible value traded for studio time. Why would anyone do that? Because Jody Nant was a working musician trying to be heard, and attaching her name to the biggest story on the internet put her in front of millions of people. She wasn't buying studio time. She was buying exposure. The one thing every artist is starving for. The year of rent was cheap next to that. This is the part of the story that quietly flips everything upside down. Early on, Kyle was exploiting the gaps between what different people valued. But now he had built something more powerful than any object, an audience. And an audience is a currency of its own. Every person down the chain had figured out the same thing Kyle had, that being part of this story was worth more than whatever they were handing over, which sets up the single most controversial trade of the entire year, the one that made thousands of people online absolutely certain that Kyle MacDonald had just thrown the whole thing away. First, that year of free rent in Phoenix got traded for an afternoon with a rock legend, Alice Cooper. It happened through a woman named Leslie, who worked at a restaurant Cooper owned and could make the introduction. A genuine, one-on-one hangout with a music icon in exchange for a year's rent. Already a strange trade, value flowing sideways rather than up. And then Kyle took that exclusive afternoon with Alice Cooper, and he traded it for a snow globe. a snow globe. A KISS-branded, motorized snow globe worth maybe $50. The internet lost its mind. This was the moment the blog's comment section turned into a bonfire. People who had cheered him for months called it the stupidest decision they had ever seen. He had gone from a year of housing to time with a legend down to a cheap novelty toy you'd find in a gift shop. The whole project, everyone agreed, was over. He'd blown it. But look closer, because this trade is the whole philosophy of the project in miniature. The man who gave up the KISS snow globe was named Mark Herman, and Mark was a die-hard Alice Cooper superfan. To him, an afternoon meeting his idol was worth infinitely more than some novelty toy sitting on his shelf. He wasn't getting fleeced. He was getting the trade of his life. And Kyle wanted that worthless toy for a reason nobody else could see. He had done his homework. There was a Hollywood actor and director named Corbin Bernsen, a familiar television face, who happened to be an obsessive, world-class collector of snow globes. By his own account, the man owned thousands of them, one of the largest such collections anywhere, and he was open about the fact that he was always hunting for rare editions. And Bernsen desperately wanted one specific, hard-to-find piece, a motorized KISS snow globe, the exact one Kyle now had in his hands. So the same object was a $50 joke to the internet and a holy grail to one particular Hollywood director. That gap was the entire game. Kyle hadn't traded down at all. He had traded a thing of value, an afternoon with Alice Cooper, for leverage over exactly the right person. He wasn't holding a $50 toy. He was holding the one key that unlocked a Hollywood director. And that director was about to hand him the trade that would finally, almost, get him his house. Corbin Bernsen wanted that snow globe badly enough to give up something remarkable for it. A paid speaking role in a film he was making called Donna on Demand. So now Kyle was holding an acting role in a Hollywood movie, and that, at last, was the golden ticket. Because a role in a film is exactly the kind of thing a place would trade a house for, but not a person, a town. The town was Kipling, Saskatchewan, a small prairie community of barely 1,100 people in the flat middle of Canada. The offer came through a local official who had been watching the Paperclip story climb and who saw an opportunity everyone else had missed. The town would hand Kyle MacDonald a 2-story house on Main Street in exchange for the movie role, and even threw in a twist of their own, holding a town-wide audition so a Kipling local could actually claim the speaking part in the film. Teenagers and grandmothers alike lined up in the community hall to read for a shot at Hollywood, and by several accounts, it was a local teenager who eventually won the part. On July 12, 2006, roughly a year to the month after he photographed a paperclip, Kyle stood on Main Street and was handed the keys. The impossible promise, the one that sounded like the setup to a bad joke back in that Montreal apartment, had been kept. 14 trades and a paperclip had become a home. And this is where the fairy tale usually ends, with the triumphant music. But here is the second piece of dirty laundry, and it's the best part of the whole story. Kipling did not give away a house out of pure, magical generosity. Kipling had a problem. Like a lot of small prairie towns, it was slowly dying. People leaving, houses sitting empty for a year or more, the life draining out of Main Street. The town council did the math coldly and brilliantly. They deliberately bought up an abandoned house specifically so they could trade it to the paperclip guy, because what they really wanted was not to give Kyle anything. What they wanted was the one thing Kyle had been manufacturing all along: national attention, tourists, headlines, a reason for the world to know Kipling existed. Kyle wasn't the only one playing the attention game. The town was playing it right back, and they won too. Because here is how it all pays off. Kipling got exactly what it paid for, and more. The town threw a celebration for the paperclip guy. It put its residents on television and its name into newspapers across the country. And to make the fame permanent, in 2007, it erected the world's largest red paperclip. a steel sculpture running something like 14 feet long, painted bright red, planted right in town so nobody could miss it. It landed Kipling in the record books and stamped its name onto the map for good. Years later, people still drive out of their way into the flat middle of Saskatchewan just to photograph a giant paperclip and hear the story. A town that had been quietly emptying out bought itself an identity and a future with one abandoned house it picked up on the cheap. It was, in its own way, exactly the same trick Kyle had pulled, turning something small and overlooked into a magnet for the world's attention. And Kyle, the man who spent a year of his life chasing this house, who crossed a continent, got mocked by the whole internet, and pulled off the impossible? He barely lived in it. After a short while, he simply gave the house back, donated it to the community. It was later bought by locals and turned into a little cafe that still carries the name of the thing that started everything, the Red Paperclip Cottage. So think about what really happened here. Kyle MacDonald never got rich off objects. The paperclip, the generator, the truck, the snow globe, none of it mattered. What he actually built and what he actually traded on was attention. He turned a boring office supply into the most watched story on the internet, and then spit that attention like the only currency that was ever really in play. And here's the final proof of it. Giving the house away cost Kyle nothing, because the house was never the real jackpot. The real jackpot was the story itself. Kyle turned that 1 year into a book, published in 2007 with a title that says the whole thing out loud, One Red Paperclip, or How an Ordinary Man Achieved His Dream with the Help of a Simple Office Supply. It was picked up by publishers and translated for readers in multiple countries. He became a sought-after speaker, telling the tale on stages around the world, including a widely watched TED Talk, and the paperclip guy became a brand in his own right. The attention he'd manufactured out of an office supply became a whole career, one worth far more than a 2-story house in a town of 1,000 people. The house was never the prize. The house was just proof of what he'd really learned to trade. He started with a red paperclip worth a fraction of a cent. He ended with the house, then gave it away, because the house was never what he was collecting.